Good morning. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. Happy Thursday. Ooh, the computer's really playing up today. Let's see what happens. Really playing up. Good morning, everybody. I hope that my link is good. Don't you start crying, little one. Tears, puppy tears. Mom, good to see you. Good morning. I wonder if I am actually on, if my volume is on. Something seems wrong this morning. Karen, great to see you in Black Forest, Colorado. Seems like there's something technically not really happening. Let me know if you can see me. That would be a really good start. I'm a little bit worried. It was very hesitant to open up, and that's not typical. I'm not seeing buddies popping up either, and I'm seeing no views. So that's not good. Suze, good morning. I will keep going. My mouth will run until I have some kind of confirmation that we are actually live. Okay, it sounds all good there, Jennifer. Interesting. Okay, great. Something's going on here because I'm showing no viewers, no changes, but I am glad you're there. I'm going to assume everything's great. Thank you. It takes a while to get that delayed response. I'm going to put you in your room if you don't stop with those tears. She's under there, underneath the table, crying for no reason. Little cutie. Happy Thursday, everyone. It is not our normal day, and the volume is fine. Okay, good. Sounds good. Well, you know, I thought that we would use today to conclude our conversation about the Navajo trading posts, rug designs, makers, companies, all the big names to conclude that conversation today. We started this on Monday, and then we went to Tuesday. I skipped Wednesday this week, and I'm here with you Thursday. So today's the day that I hope to conclude this conversation, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback and good questions about the subject of Navajo rugs. So interesting. Sometimes when we veer off the main rug hooking path and we talk about different areas of art and rug making, thanks, Jody. Good to see you. Hey, Chrissy. It goes really well. I don't know if I said hi, Jennifer. I think I said hi, Suze. Good morning, everybody. There we go. Had to reopen and start a second time. Interesting. Yeah, there's something weird happening. It's, yeah, something. It's something. As long as it doesn't happen tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is our bingo night, our cocktail night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The theme is Fine Art Bingo tomorrow night, looking at some fairly unusual paintings that maybe you haven't seen before, and talking about some painters from many centuries, but mostly the 19th and 20th centuries, mostly almost contemporary painters, looking at their work and hearing some interesting stories. There's always interesting stories when painters are involved, right? So we're doing that tomorrow night at 7 Eastern Standard Time. Make sure that you tune in for that. Hey, Heidi. If you're interested in that, that'll be a lot of fun. And you can get your bingo cards on the link, the description of this video here. I also posted in this video, I'll remind you later, we did, if you are enjoying this conversation on Navajo rugs, makers, trading posts, all of the lore, hello, Cindy, then I'll remind you that, I don't know if it was this year or last year on Coffee Time, we covered, I think it was last year, Abanakee rugs, right? So this is more of a New Hampshire-based, the Abanakee rugs, and Helen Albee, that whole conversation about her designing in the very early 20th century, Abanakee rugs, like right at the start of the 20th century. So we covered that last year, and that was another interesting series of conversations and figuring things out about that whole subject. Again, based more in New Hampshire right now, or more in New Mexico than New Hampshire. But that conversation was interesting, and I put out, if you are interested in this style of design, a bunch of Helen Albee style, sort of Abanakee motif-driven rug designs and swatch set. Because we were talking about dyeing on Wednesday when we left off this conversation, sorry, Tuesday. And at that time, if you remember, I had the Helen Albee book that I ordered as a reprint because it's extremely rare. And I dyed a bunch of dyes according to her early recipes. So all of that is available too. If you like the subject of like Native American rug making and design, you might enjoy that series of Abanakee Conversations, Helen Albee, A-L-B-E-E, from last year. I think it was more like this time last year, maybe. Same time last year. Crystal, good morning. Good to see you. Lynn, good morning. Good to see you. Cindy, good morning. I think everything's getting sorted out now. We were having a huge glitchy hiccup at the beginning of this episode, but I think we're good. So let's see where we left off. We were talking on Tuesday about the different posts and about the different designs that emerged from the different posts. And we were having that continued conversation about how a lot of people, respective of each post, were contributing to the designs. Sometimes the designs were very traditional, driven by traditional alphabet sources and motifs, symbols, right? And sometimes they were just driven by what was perceived as popular and saleable for the Eastern market, meaning like the East Coast cities. And so that's where we left off. We talked about a couple of the trading posts, and we stopped at the Chinle trading post, Cinle. So let me come back over. I'll go back and forth for a while because that was a bit of a start, wasn't it? Let's come back over here. We definitely left off with this image from this slideshow last week. This is an eBay image. I don't even know if this is still available or if somebody snapped that up. But I was making the point at the end of that episode. Let me see if this is where we're. Nope, not yet. Hang on. There we go. That's where I want to be. I was making the point that if you enjoy looking at these rugs and learning about these rugs, there is so much to know online about Navajo rugs. But there's also so much to buy online, and they are not super dear. Like the image that I just showed you was $3.99 on eBay, and again, that was from Tuesday, so I'm not sure if that's still there. But there are a lot of Navajo small and large rugs in the designs that we've been talking about this week that are available for sale and are not necessarily bank breakers. So if you are falling in love with these designs and this story, there's a lot for you to sort of ferret out in terms of shopping. So the Chinle Post, this is a picture of it probably at the time of the publishing of this book, the middle 1970s. Thunderbird Lodge at Chinle, oasis at the mouth of the canyon. And the word Chinle is translated as it flows from the canyon. This is another sort of higher elevation, over 5,000 feet trading post. And this one was established in 1903 by Mrs. Camillo, her name was Pauline Garcia, and Gerald Lafont. So a pairing here. We're starting to hear in the chronology and the story of this book, at least the way that it moves, there are some women who are appearing out in the Southwest, way far out. Because if you remember, I was showing images of Archibald, I think his name was Sweetland, in Tuesday's episode, and we were remarking on how brutal the weather conditions can be and how it was considered extremely rare and not odd, but curious for a man like him who's not used to that kind of temperature to be able to stick it out all season in such a lonely place with such extreme weather conditions, but he did. And we are starting to see instances of women living out year-round too, establishing posts or at least living with their husbands at posts. So this is another turn in the story. This post, the Chinle Post, well, this whole area had been visited and settled since the 17th century. So this is like, it goes a canyon up to like a higher elevation. I'm saying it wrong. It sounds like it's supposed to be said like Segi, like Tseghi. That's a toughie. So that's, I've been massacring that. In any case, this trading post has many parts to it. For example, we're seeing just the front door of it right now, but the Thunderbird Lodge, that's this piece, is there, and it's almost like a T shape with Garcia's trading post attached to it. There's going to be a rug room. Everything is kind of definite, separate, because the selling is very separate, right? The customer who's coming in from a department store from New York doesn't necessarily want to see the massive display of rifles, right? So these are pretty sprawling, organically evolved buildings. This is maybe a better picture of it, where you can see how building upon building, this is early 20th century, like 1900s, you can see how they evolve organically according to the needs, according to needing shelter for manufacturer making, and then areas for selling and areas for living year round. So these posts are each fairly unique in their configuration. And, I don't know at all how many of these are still around. If anybody knows, that would be a great sort of segue, because I'm sure some of them must still be around, but I know at least in this part of the country, I know of maybe 2 or 3 trading posts, more like Massachusetts, New Hampshire area, but they're more tourist places now, which I guess they always were, really, when you think about it, right? I mean, not necessarily busloads coming in like there are now, but shopping centers of the day. So this is one of the Chinle designs. These designs tend to go in bars, occasionally with motifs. Let me show you. Let me see if I have more Chinle designs. I didn't put tons of each one because I could see that the conversation was getting really long, and I'm doing an extra day this week to cover this. So their symbols are, let me come away for a minute. This one is a typical one with bars, pyramids, right? The crosses, all that. This one we looked at, I think, on Monday. But you see these are, the orientation is kind of a horizontal orientation with vertical bars. So that is its own look. Still very contemporary looking design, filling in lots of colors, lots of shapes, lots of symbols that are unique to the Chinle Post. I'm not even going to try to say it any better than that. Wavy lines connecting diamonds. They do squash blossom designs, but as like a series. So every time we look at a different trading post, we are seeing a Navajo rug, but each post seems to be so different style-wise from the next. Even if you remember back to that picture that I showed you of the first fair in 1912. Oh, Karen says there's still a trading post in Colorado Springs at the Garden of the Gods. Oh, interesting. That's something to Google. Colorado Springs Garden of the Gods. God, that sounds like a great place, doesn't it? This is a picture of Hubble's post. Hubble, we keep talking about Hubble, and there's no way we're going to get through an episode without talking about Hubble, because he's one of the 2 really main post owners. He really dictates and influences the direction of the rug making, the inspiration, the color. He's really very, very, very proactive, not just turning a buck. So this, and one of the 2 most lucrative, financially lucrative and successful posts. So this is Hubble's post, and again, obviously this is like middle to later 20th century, and this is Hubble himself, Juan Lorenzo Hubble, photo of him in 1890 in New Mexico. And this is a picture of the interior of his post back in the day. So this would have been like 1890s. And you can see, remember on Monday how we were saying the rugs weren't one of the original things that were being sold or traded. They were doing a little bit with, because remember the interment period, and then there was the transition coming out of the interment period where weavers were rounded up and given inferior yarn products, and then sort of morale and quality and interest in the product just kind of disappeared for a time. This is right before that time, and at this point they would still have been at that very early phase making mostly sheaf blankets, saddle blankets, that kind of thing, but not full-size rugs to sell elsewhere. Cosmic Coyote Dog, good to see you. So remember, 1890 is the magic year that the rug making business emerges, right, as its own, stands on its own. And Hubble is one of the people, if not the main person, who initiates that shift and sees a place in the market for a decorative and expensive handmade Navajo rug. We saw this image on one of our thumbnails. This is inside the Hubble trading post in the 20th century. This is part of their rug room. Their rug room was vast, but you can see that they set it up as a house interior, so you could see all the different uses for the textile, because of course you could have stuff custom made too. Beautiful rugs / blankets up on the chair, sofa, table, rugs on the floor, some upholstery, it looks like, on that leather couch that is also done in rug material. So lots of different opportunities for displaying the wares. This is another corner of the same rug room. And you can see one of the ladies who maybe works on the rugs or manages the project is showing some of these rugs, some of the designs behind her. The crosses, right, like the Maltese type cross, the onion or squash blossom, right, on the left on that mustard yellow ground. You see some rugs that are a bit busier, technically more difficult for weaving. You see on the far right, there are smaller blanket slash rugs. You see a kind of what is known as a quilt pattern, that in video game terms, Cubert pattern, right? Like the three-dimensional stacked blocks. Interesting, right? So each of these, hold on one second. I think I have the loom in here. Oh, okay, this is a different loom picture. Each of these trading posts is obviously trying to evolve distinct patterns that are even lovelier than the nearest trading post and desirable enough to be snapped up. There is a great demand for them. This is one that is on the loom, outside the post. Beautiful day. You can get a feel for the scale of it. Definitely a floor size. You can see that the rug is being worked to the size of the loom. Absolutely beautiful atmospheric photo. I could not resist putting that one in there. Now, let's travel a little ways to the Ganado trading post. Ganado is associated with Hubble, so I think that this is one and the same. This is another one of these trading posts with many buildings and many comings and goings, very high elevation at 6,400. This post is established in 1883, and the trader associated with Hubble's empire, this is like a trading empire, right, was, his name was W.S., but he was known as Bill Young. At least in the 70s, this location was owned by the U.S. National Park Service. I'm not sure about anymore. It would be great to know whether they still have control over the buildings itself. So this is a Ganado rug. Different again. We're getting that sort of checkered repeat diamonds. We are seeing the reds and the blacks. Remember from previously Monday and Tuesday, we were talking about the great demand for red and black as a chemical dye, because before having the dye available to use, they could not get that intense red or that intense black. And what they were doing was buying bolts of a fabric called bayette or bayetta, and it was red fabric that they would unspin, reverse engineer, spin back into yarn and start again. And that was much more labor intensive, as you can imagine, than the possibility of just getting red dye and dyeing everything red. Remember at the end of the last episode also, we were talking about how these packets of dye now came already mixed with the mordant. And that was a big game changer, because until that point, it would be quite dangerous to be mixing, doing that whole part of it with the acid. So these are great innovations for this time, the turn of the 20th century. The Ganado rug is associated with the Hubble trading post. And when I say Ganado, we are not talking about, just a reminder, we are not talking about a specific design, right? It's many designs. I have to move to, what am I moving to? Hold on one second. Let me just look at my notes. Yeah, I see. There we go. Loom, here we go. Color-wise, they are united, right? Lots of indigo, lots of black, lots of red, lots of blue, gray by default, right? That stormy gray. So it isn't that the design is called Ganado, it's that the post is called Ganado. So anything that comes out of that post will be called Ganado rug, no matter which design is employed, whether it's the encased cross, the open cross, outlined diamonds, stepped terraces, serrated forms, the Moki, M-O-K-I crosses, whatever it is, it's still going to be called a Ganado rug. So if you are searching and looking for a rug to buy online, you like this style. Let me show you. Let me see if there's, no, those are the only two I put from Ganado. Let me come back to you here and show you color-wise, right? This is the kind of palette that they're working with. If that's your color palette, then you want to search for Ganado, G-A-N-A-D-O rug. Otherwise, let's go to another. Let's take another little trip over to, I think our next stop is Wide Ruins. We touched on this before too. This is such another beautiful, such an atmospheric picture. I'll remind you that this book I'm looking at is called Posts and Rugs, The Story of Navajo Rugs and Their Homes by H.L. James. We are only talking about Navajo rugs, but many different posts, many different makers, designers, in essence, shops, right? But all Navajo. So Wide Ruins, elevation 6,000. The post office was established there, meaning trading post, in 1934 by joint owners Mr. and Mrs. John Reifer. Interesting, this is like a juniper forested hill, beautiful kind of lush country here. It looks a little bit different, doesn't it? Let me show you one of my favorite pictures in the book. Here we go. Bill and Sally Lippincott, circa 1945. You get so few references to women being out here at these posts. Well, here's Sally with Bill at the trading post in 45, looking just super Annie Oakley, right? Looking like just so cool. Look at this beautiful old truck. They've got the trading post wide ruins written on the side. Just beautiful advertising. Nice early photo. So Wide Ruins has, as with all the other trading posts, its own distinct style. Similar to the Chinle rugs, right? That vertical stripe with patterning, but different. They're all a little bit different palette-wise. They're all different yet again. This post, a lot of this kind of design, but for example, this particular rug, beautiful palette using just a little bit of black, using more of what we now refer to, I think, in the late 20th and 21st century as Santa Fe colors, right? This kind of clay palette with the kind of paprika clay colors with black, with a little bit of ochre, getting into not particularly this rug, but like olive greens. We remember that palette. I distinctly remember it from the 80s when the whole thing started. This post, the Wide Ruins, uses a lot of that palette. This kind of really unusual blue that we just don't see at other posts. Look at this fine filigree striping in between the bars. And this feather pattern, the feather arrow kind of pattern, is checkered, right? So it's more than just an arrow pattern or a feather pattern. It's really graphic. And you can see that this would really lead into the next decades of design, this kind of a style. Really exceptionally good colors. Let me show you another of the Wide Ruins rugs. And again, you can search for Wide Ruins. You will find these for sale, without a doubt. Just beautiful. It's something that's like alchemy about their color palettes. That olivey green, that earthy green, and that bright mustard. How can mustard be that bright, that beautiful gold mustard? So few colors. It's really 3 or 4 colors in this rug, but it seems like a colorful rug, doesn't it? It's exquisitely pretty. So they do a lot. Let me come back to the one before. This post, in terms of patterning, I want to come back to, let me see. Oops, wait a minute. Nope. Spoiler alert. This one. Yeah. So this one, these are stylized arrows. It's like an arrow with many sort of feathery things. I don't know what the term is coming off the back of it. But this actual pattern, the way that Wide Ruins did it, is called Stylized Arrows for chevrons. So chevron meaning a checkerboard driven motif that is pulled in one direction, like Bargello. If you remember the needlepoint form called Bargello, you're pulling it one direction, and with it comes this checkerboard. It starts to move. It becomes pop art. It becomes like an optical illusion. It's extremely busy, fussy, and difficult, and the result is beautiful. But I think the success of this design, which they will repeat again and again and again at Wide Ruins, is it is so busy in the pictured part with the arrow chevron design that nice break of those drab olive bars, and then in the center, very filigree demonstration of all these colors. These are all kind of clay colors, these in-between colors. Absolutely beautiful. The softness, right? It's almost like a little waterfall, a little stream flowing quietly, and then these 3 bars, just a burst of pop art design. Really, really interesting. Jody, they are breathtaking. A bunch of comments on this rug. We'll look at that again. You know, it's so nice when something strikes you in such a way that you think to yourself, God, I love those colors. I mean, I particularly am not a yellow person or brown person, but when I see these colors together, I think, wow, that is really something. Sometimes the design speaks to you. Sometimes the colors speak to you, right? Who knows? Who knows how these things began? One of their other designs that I don't think I got into the slideshow, I want to hold up for you, is really unusual. I didn't find an example of a rug with it, but it's called multiple squash blossoms, right? Which is very real similar to the onion blossoms. Wait a minute, over here. So lots, right? That would be another example of, like the feather chevrons, wide ruins doing really, really intricate, complicated weaving. And a little bit stretched. The squash bottom blossoms are a little bit stretched again. That it must be one of their looks, right? I'm just guessing. The chevron are quite elongated. The olive blossoms, onion blossoms. How bad am I? Sometimes they say orange, sometimes they say olive. You know what I mean, right? Unusual, unusual. So they have like, in this book, just so you know, they talk about cost. They talk about who the people were who were making them. These are not just anonymous people. They're giving a lot of credit to a lot of people. As I said on Monday, the scholarship in this book is unbelievable. It's very, very detailed. So there's a list of all the weavers. 1, 2, 3, Marie, Mary, Marie, Annie, Mabel, Marie, Blanche, Mary, Mary, Eunice, Fanny, Mary, Mary, Nellie, Eleanor, Mary, Agnes, Ellen, Marjorie, Lottie, Annie, Anita. So those are all women weavers by the sound of things. They all have last names listed too, but you know what? There's only like 4 last names, so it must all be family members. Interesting. This is the kind of interesting information you could really go down a rabbit hole with this book, following the families and the designs. They could really be taken. You could follow some of these ideas, for example, the elongated chevron, right, with the feathers, the arrow chevron. You could just study that and write like a dissertation on that. I'm sure there's plenty of information out there. It also talks about the comparative cost, because I bet you've been wondering that. We talked a little bit about the way that money exchanges to sort of contemporary times from different time periods. And this is always a tough one because of rises and falls, right? In the Gilded Age, it was like 45 to $1. But then after that, there was a depression. And then again in the 1929, there was another depression. So these kinds of ebbs and flows really drastically change the way that you can translate a dollar amount from today to 1900 anything. It's a bit tricky, right? It's not as easy as it would seem. It's not like it scales down, the further away in time you go, the further back in time you go, it scales down. It doesn't really work like that. But comparative costs. So the range for wide ruins is per square foot, $20 to $150, right, per square foot. So these are not inexpensive rugs. This book is 1970s. These are not inexpensive rugs, right? If anything, they were a little more expensive a little bit before, because we know the peak of the rug window, the rug making window for Navajo rugs was 1890 to 1940, right? They gave us that way at the beginning. Knowing that, we're well into the 70s here. This book is 76, right? So if anything, the rugs would have been more expensive earlier on. But, for example, 1974, a 3x5 rug was between $300 and $600. Remember, wide ruins is expensive because it's very, very fussy and filigree and tricky, their designs, very elaborate designs. A 4x6 rug was $750 to $1,000. It goes up, up, up to $2,000 plus. In 10 years later, in 1964, this was one of the real down cycles for the Navajo rug, because from 1940 to the 1970s, people were not typically at all looking at handcrafts as something special, right? Because we talk about this all the time on Coffee Time. The whole period after the Second World War, when people were moving into suburbs, department stores were popping, shopping plazas started opening up, shopping malls started opening up, everybody wanted new stuff, baby boom, right? Handcrafts, not so much. It's not until the 1970s that we get back into that era of crazy crafting with macrame, with fiber arts, with weaving, with rug making. This is a super downward in the 1960s. That would have been the time to buy a rug. Because, for example, a 6x9 rug in 1964 was between $300 and $500, but 10 years later, it was between $1,000 and $1,500 because the demand went back up. So this is why it's hard to look at the cost of things in terms of, you can't look at what things cost, including the Navajo rug, in terms of it must have been good so it costs a lot, because it doesn't work like that. It works along the ebbs and flows of popularity and demand. That dictates the value, not the workmanship or the supplies. It's whether it's popular at that moment or not. So it's a shame to always be at the mercy of that mindset, but that is life and that is trade, isn't it, in general? Otherwise, there'd be no Wall Street or stock market. So the next one that I want to go to together is, let's travel to the Western Reservation, which is called Tonalea or Tonale. Hey, Cats Gallery. It's like pricing real estate. Yeah, it is like pricing real estate. It is, even from, as we know with 2020, even from one year to the next, the thing just is not worth the same amount. It is scary. The Red Lake Trading Post at Tonale or Tonalea, I'm going to say Tonale, correct me if I'm wrong. So this is another very high elevation, 6,457 feet. Post office established in 1926 by Jerry Norris, but the owner is the Babbitt Brothers Company. So the person who runs the post, and again, we've said this before, but in case you're just joining us, is not necessarily the same person who runs the post. Owning the post and running the post are two different things. Establishing the post, sometimes done by the U.S. government, sometimes done by a private individual, who then hires people, native people who are living locally with skills, and manager-type people to come in and make good decisions about design, about buying, about trading, about selling. So it's another one of these situations. So the Tonalea Post, isn't it funny? That's a gas pump outside. You see those two little gas pumps. That is such a moment in time. Let me see if no, I don't think I did. The Tonalea Post is very well known for many variations on the storm design. Now, the storm motif is a Native American motif, right? This is not one that has been doctored or altered. This is one that has been around many Native American tribes, people, places, reservations. It's fairly interchangeable. So the idea of it is not like it was stolen, borrowed, or anything like that. It's universal. But at this particular trading post, it's a very popular motif. Many varieties of the storm design. We are looking at another sort of horizontal orientation rug. One of the things that this post does often is a nice border. You know, this one just has a border on two sides, black border on two sides. Some posts do no borders, right? We've seen a lot of no border designs. This has a little border. Most of theirs has some kind of a border. Really intricate storm design, isn't it? Everything is agitated. The diamonds, the central motif, everything is in motion, right? Again, you can see the sort of, I don't want to say the Santa Fe influence, because it's these rugs that had us saying 20, 30 years later, Santa Fe style, right? This is the chicken that came before the egg. But you can really see how this style of rug will influence later decoration styles, like in the 1970s, 1980s, and also pop art, right? Very, very symmetrical, very bold, very graphic, very exciting, the storm design. And there's so many storm designs. I've got to show you a few more. This is an advertisement for a storm design. Let me see if I can move it up a little bit. Nope, not going to do it. Let me see. Nope, too scared. One more try, one more try. Nope, give up. All right, so this is an advertisement in a catalog from 1911. Remember the Navajo catalog? It was just called The Navajo. 1911, it was put out by John B. Moore, right? Moore and Hubble, those were the two guys who were doing a lot at the beginning of the 20th century with marketing Navajo rugs. And not always just their own trading post, right? That was the idea behind the Fair of 1912, wasn't it? It wasn't just your stuff. It was, look at all of our stuff. Let's look at a collective exhibition of all of our work. And you know, this is a great lesson for us, because you know, for example, I don't do a lot of fairs right now. I did a couple last summer and they almost killed me. It's just so much work and aggravation. But you know, having done fairs and things in the past, more often, you do you always encounter these people who at a fair, other vendors are like, oh, nobody's buying today. And they're just like ticked off at the people walking by. And they're so aggressive about getting business to their stall. And I always say to those people, and I'm sure it's very antagonistic because I'm being passive aggressive when I say it, but I always say, listen, don't get into that mindset, particularly not at 7 o'clock in the morning, because when people who are shopping come and get into the mindset of coming over to your stall and buying something, they've already got their wallet out. And chances are when they get to my stall, they'll be much more likely to buy something because they're already in that happy mindset of like picking stuff up, right? Be like that. Don't be the other thing. And that's really what this 1912 fair established for the Navajo community was like, we're not just selling our own rugs and setting up a big hoo-ha for us. This is for all of us. If they buy your rugs this year, maybe they'll buy my rugs next year. Who cares? I bet you it's all going to come out in the wash, right? That is the right mindset. That's why that fair is just so cool that it happened the way that it happened. This is an advertisement for a storm rug in John Moore's catalog. So a little bit different than the one we just saw, more block driven, still very, very graphic, four-sided border on this one. Special design and weave by the Tivaevae, spelled completely different, as you can imagine, but beautiful 64 by 92 inch sized rug advertised here in 1911 for $23.50, and that's the small size. But it goes up to a 6 by 9, and then it doesn't say how much it is at that point. But it does say $1 for every additional square foot, or $21 to $23.50 for the smallest size. Which, you know, in 1911, that was a good amount of money. That was a fair chunk, considering we can get them on eBay now for in the low hundreds. Yeah, that was a good amount. So storm pattern. Let me just walk you through. Oh, I just moved our thing again. I like looking at these old ads because the language is really interesting. Talking about the prospective buyer. So much text in these early ads. Isn't it crazy? Like, I mean, I'm just scanning this paragraph. Not many weavers will do it for superstitious reasons, the storm pattern, he means. And on that account, its production is practically confined to one or two family clans. It's an improved adaptation of blah, blah, blah. He goes on and on and on. And all I can think is right now, I'm trying to post videos on YouTube because people want enough information to make an Amish toothbrush rug in literally 2 minutes and 30 seconds or get like a virtual PhD in 5 minutes. It's so different. It's so different now, isn't it? The advertising is so important at this period. And that's why if anybody finds that Navajo catalog, keep it. Treasure it, but please let us know so we can check out some of the other pages. This is another storm pattern, beautiful mustard. Again, that mixed background, right? That mixed background is probably not colored. It's probably the sheep colors, like the black maybe with a little bit of gray, or maybe just one black sheep that's not entirely black, right? Because they don't have to dye every single part of the rug. When you get this kind of herringbony or busy look to a solid color that's not quite solid, you're probably looking at the natural color of the sheep fur because there's so many colors. So another idea for a storm pattern. And let me see, let me show you a few more and then I'm going to show you the breakdown of the storm pattern. Another one, I mean, these can't be any more different, right? This has like that embedded X in the middle, right? Super agitated storm. The graduated diamonds on the side, right? Lots of stepped motifs. And then this really electric, dark and light at the top and bottom wave. And then look at this border, this beautiful mellow red. And again, not the goddess. Remember the goddess pattern, how it only goes around 3 edges and it does have a figural look to it? This is like that in that it is a busy border, not figural. It still reflects the storm pattern motif, but in multicolor, right? It's cool. It's got almost a rainbow going, multicolored. I don't mean rainbow spectrum. I mean rainbow multicolor going right around the edge. Really different take. And so, for example, this book is great at this too, showing us a breakdown of what we're looking at. Often in the center box, like on the last one, let me just show you one more time. So you go, oh yeah, the X in the middle, right? Oh yeah, there it is. So that X in the middle is the center box, which represents the Hogan dwelling, right? So there's going to be an X right in the middle of that for the storm pattern. And then at the bottom, the filler designs are lightning. These are filler designs. It's not making a picture. It's composing a series of motifs. So those triangular filler designs are lightning. On the left, more filler designs. The box with the two lines coming out of it, which could be like an arrow with the diamonds at the end. The borders are usually for for the storm pattern rugs, usually red or black. Sometimes like a sort of not Greek key, but a dental mold, what we would call a dental mold, or just barred, or the really busy one that we just saw was a bit more unusual, a bit more sophisticated. Sometimes has a dark border with an inner border, showing us all kinds of things. It's showing us at the bottom right-hand side, 4 squares at each corner represent the 4 sacred mountains of Navajo mythology. Now that is something that we have not heard yet. That is super interesting. Super interesting. So let me show you one more thing in this episode. I'm going to come back here in a minute. Let me come back to you for a second, and then I'll switch back. This book did such a good job, again, Posts and Rugs, right? The Story of Navajo Rugs and Their Homes by H.L. James does such a good job of first talking to us about the history of the different periods of Navajo rug, right? From their early classical period to the classical period to the height of the rug making period, to the transition period after the interment time. I mean, it really goes era by era and breaks down the history of what people were doing at that time that affected either for the good or the bad, the production of these rugs. So having that in a nutshell history was so helpful at the beginning of the book. And then the whole center of the book, he took us literally with maps, right? I didn't show you a ton of line drawing maps, but there's tons of them in this book. He took us on a tour place by place of where the different trading posts are in the region. And it was we're pretending to be traveling on a bus together or something like that, but stopping at one post after another, looking at what their main motifs are, what their main colors are, who the owner was, who was designing the rugs there, all of this interesting information. And at the very end of the rug, starting at chapter 12, which is page 91, this book goes to about 130 something pages. He starts talking to us about other specialty rugs. So when we were just talking about the ideas for pricing, how much are they priced, the pricing always stops at a certain point, at a certain size, and then it's just the open-ended category specialty rugs. Because it could be that a customer comes in and says, I like your mustard yellow, I like your storm design, but I want this. And then we're talking about a specialty rug, which would cost a specialty price, right? So the whole end of the book, and I didn't take a ton of photos of them, are just pages of very small thumbnails of specialty rugs that have been made, and it tells you what post made them. Often who they were for, why they wanted them, what the designs mean. Some of them very graphic, just different, more exciting reading. But the one that I pulled out that I wanted to show you was the 4-in-1. Because it's considered the rarest. So let's come back here. This is a tiny photograph. That's why the quality is not great. This is called the 4-in-1 rug. If you see one of these and you know enough about the rug to know that it is an older rug, it's a good one to get if you can afford it. Perhaps the rarest rug in contemporary Navajo weaving is the 4-in-1 style. It consists of either aniline dyed handspun, meaning chemical dyed, or commercial yarn woven into an overall bordered format consisting of 4 equal quadrants. Each square contains a separate design, each different from the other 3, right? So no repeats. This is not a tile pattern. This is not an alternating pattern. This is 4 different designs, right? They can look similar, but they aren't similar. They aren't the same. Some 4-in-1 rugs display pairs of squares. Okay, for example, 2 sand paintings. So this one here on the top right and the bottom left, takeoffs on sand paintings, right? Kind of tree of life type motif with a takeoff on a sand painting, right? Different colors, definitely unique, but both similar and both based on that sand painting. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we covered the trading post that was most inspired by sand painting, I think on Monday's episode. Two sand paintings, and for example, two pictorials. Well, this one has two sort of sand paintings, two geometrics. These rugs require a great deal of imagination, talent, and perseverance. They are rarely attempted and highly prized. So all of these kinds of extra things to know are at the end of the book. They put in pictures of saddle blankets with fringe, right? Because we're not seeing fringe on these blankets, but some of them do, right? The chief blanket, saddle blanket can have fringe. Remember the general rug for a general was one that was super desirable on the East Coast. They're showing different examples of these and variations of the things that we've already talked about, just pages of that, which was really interesting. And then in the appendix, he gives rules for buying a Navajo rug. Now, I don't know enough to say that these would be the same rules today. There's no reason to doubt it, but at least in 1976, he gives you a lot of rules about checking the tightness of the weave, the smoothness of the rug, checking on color uniformity, but reminding you throughout that each rug is unique and special and different. And every rug will have irregularities that don't make it imperfect, right? It makes it handmade. So he walks you through all this if you are interested in buying a rug. He said, if the appeal is aesthetically right, the size is right, the price is right, buy it. Fine Navajo rugs are a good investment. The turnover is high, and the choice fabrics do not linger long on the racks. The one you had your eye on today may be gone tomorrow. Yeah, true. He talks about consulting dealers and all that. I think that has changed, hasn't it? Because your average antique dealer right now is like a generalist and does not know what he's talking about. And there's a very high chance of him also being a dirtbag. It's just saying that from flea market experiences. Not all, obviously. Jay is a dealer. But, you have to be careful if you're asking somebody for value help, particularly if they would like to buy it from you afterwards. So you know enough to be careful about that stuff. And then the third part of the appendix is 1974, which rugs and what people won different ribbons at the fair in New Mexico for rugs, which was a huge category. All kinds of categories to consider in this. It's the New Mexico State Fair, right? For example, the best aniline dyed rug, so chemically dyed rug, the best natural wool rug, the best vegetable dye rug, the best Two Gray Hills design rug. So broken into all kinds of categories. It seems like it was a lot of fun. The Yay rug, remember, with all the dancer figures on it. Lots of categories. It's just good reading. Having done what we've done a lot with this book. But if I had unlimited time, this is the author here. I should have put a picture of him checking out rugs. Beautiful, isn't it? Isn't that beautiful, the one he's got? I could spend 6 months just looking at this book and researching things that relate to it and coming back to you with answers and thoughts, because there is so much information in here that it's just crazy. And funny, I know I've said this before, but this is not a subject that has ever interested me for no reason other than it's just, it's not my area of interest design-wise. I've always, gone to art school for different things, maybe a bit European-centered. But I've never really been interested in the idea of checking out Navajo rugs. And this has been so interesting. I can see that I have missed a lot because it really puts basic design, graphic design, into a crucible, burns off all of the nonsense, and you get very, very pure, solid, meaningful, and thoughtful design. And color-wise, it has been such a journey from beginning to end, talking about the limited natural colors that they had, and then the interment period where they're just using sheep colors. So, whites, off-whites, ivories, kind of yellowy white, grays, blacks, browns, lots of them, but still very limited, to coming back with vegetable dyes and plant dyes and all that, and then very early on, still in the 19th century, having those aniline dyes. And what a game changer that was. And then remember, after another kind of low period, they came back with this pastel palette that really reinvigorated the market, because the new palette kind of corresponded with the Art Deco period, right? That's not a coincidence. And that desire for all of those very light pastel kind of ice cream colors. And the Navajo Rug market stepped up, addressed that trend, that interest, and started making rugs that fit that description. So just an interesting story about making inspiration, individual characters, right? And all of those you could research like crazy. All of the names that I brought up in this book, they are all really wild, hardy characters. And the women who appear on the scene too, really stout and hardy women appearing out there at these posts year round. Really crazy. Oh, thank you, Lynn. I'm really curious too. I'm so alert now, just scrolling on eBay and getting all my morning mail about things popping up. I'm alert now to these kinds of designs because I go, ooh, I think I know what that is now. It's so nice to have that language in place to say this is a storm rug or this is a yay rug. It's just nice. It's another feather in your cap, isn't it, when you know? So I'm really happy that we covered this. We will cover sort of more diverse subjects. I've gotten a little bit away from just traditional rug talks, but we will get back to those too, of course. I just, all of a sudden with spring being here, it just feels like such a big wide open world. I'm just curious about everything all of a sudden. Thank you, Mom. Thumbs up for the channel Ribbon Candy Hooking. Thank you to Patreon members. I will be photographing tomorrow. It's been so long, but I have gotten so busy. The rest of the vintage patterns, and I will give first whack to the Patreon members who support the channel and support me as a thank you, as I always do. So be looking for a message from me on Friday. I'm almost finished putting the bingo together. Remember your bingo cards, Fine Art Bingo Friday night. The link to that is here in this video. I also put the link in this video to the Abanakee rugs, right? That is like, those are Native American designs by Helen Albee based on area like region New Hampshire, Vermont kind of thing, right? So completely different part of the country, but beautiful collection of rugs and dyes. And I will be separating all of those, the Abanakee swatch set, I'll be separating that by color tonight and offering each of those as individual colors because all of those colors related to a dye in Helen Albee's Abanakee recipe book, right? From like I think it was 01 or 02. So really nice old colors represented in that. So if you're interested in these Navajo rugs, you might be interested in the crossover and the shows from that too. What else did I mean to tell you? Not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. Oh my gosh, I think it's this coming weekend. No, it's not. It's Mother's Day this weekend. Next weekend, I will be teaching Amish toothbrush at Madison, Connecticut. So if you're around here, you can look at Mad Wool, Madison Wool. Check their website. It's on there to sign up. We will be putting an Amish toothbrush rug together with cotton, like plain sort of quilt cotton bed sheet, recycled stuff. Really cool and fun class. It's a good making class. Bingo cards are on there. Abanakee stuff is up there. I'm getting a bunch of orders out. It is Thursday already. I picked up the car after not having it for weeks and weeks because it needed the engine replaced, and it wouldn't start this morning because now the battery's dead, right? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Murphy is just right in my grill lately, messing with me at every turn. But regardless, I will be with you tomorrow night for bingo night. If you need anything or have any thoughts in the meantime, you can write to me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow for bingo. Make sure that you get your cards. I will explain bingo. It's just crossing boxes off. That's it. But I'll explain it tomorrow when we start at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will see you then. Patreon members, be looking for a message from me. See you tomorrow night. Have a great